Hi there. This is Scotland 2015. Unfortunately these days the only real legends that we look up to in society are probably football players. Or, worse than that, are icons or actors, people that pretend to be other people. Or probably even worse again, some people hero worship tennis players. Tennis players. What is that about? But what I want to do today is tell you about a real legend, a real true legend that survived in the Scottish borders. Probably the only information most of us have about this guy is the label of a bottle of Broughton Ale's Black Douglas. But I want to tell you the true story of this guy, the Black Douglas. Come with me. James Douglas's father had fought with William Wallace. His father was captured by the English and killed in the Tower of London. So as a child, James was sent to Paris for his education, just for safety. When he came back to Scotland as a man, the Douglas family land had been gifted to an English lord by King Edward of England. When James pleaded with the king to return his land, the answer was a straight no. The king's refusal to give Douglas back his land was, in hindsight, the biggest mistake of his life. It led Douglas on a path of revenge and liberation for the rest of his life. Douglas pretty much took up residence in the borderlands, places like this in Galashiels. Englishman's Syke, where a band of English invaders were murdered in 1337. No doubt the men of Galashiels who carried out this act had either fought with Douglas, or if not, they certainly would have been inspired by his tales. Douglas had a chance encounter with Robert the Bruce. That led to a pact between the two men. The Bruce controlled the war against the English in the north, whereas Douglas was the commander-in-chief in the southern armies guarding the borderlands. Douglas made the borderlands his own in the forthcoming years. His campaign to drive the English oppressors out of the country from his base in the Scottish borders around Ettrick and Torwood Lee was a fully successful one. One of Douglas's most famous and daring exploits was when he ransacked the English garrison at Roxburgh Castle. What I hope to do today is find the remains of Roxburgh Castle down in Kelso. It's common. According to my old maps, this here is the site of Roxburgh Castle, just outside Kelso. In the 1300s, this was, along with Edinburgh Castle, the biggest, most strategic and most important fortress in the whole of Scotland, which unfortunately made it a great target for the English as well. And at that time in 1314 it was occupied by the English. It was the stronghold of Edward I's garrison in the south of Scotland. Let's go and see if we can find any evidence of the castle left. You can clearly see the man-made ditch, or it was actually a moat in these days. They cleverly designed it so as the river flooded water into the moat around the castle here. And then the main mound at the back there must be where the castle was sited. So let's go and take a climb up the castle and see if we can find any real remains. I'm afraid there's no very much left of the old structure at all. But you can see the immense thickness of the walls. The fortifications were really strong, and the actual vantage point here, it's so high and so steep above the plains and the rivers below. There's actually quite a lot of the wall surviving at this point. I've seen some drawings of the place which make it look huge, absolutely massive, but you think, you know, maybe they're just a bit romanticised, a bit exaggerated, but I'm really starting to get an idea of the scale of the place now. It really is huge. So remember, the English army was garrisoned here in 1314. It was a real stronghold of the English army in Scotland in the south, here at Roxburgh. And on the night of February the 17th, 1314, Douglas and an army of his men, only 80 men remember, they had no means of attacking the castle by conventional powers. You know, they never had the manpower, they never had the firepower, so they had to think of a way to do it in less conventional terms. So what they did was they dressed as cattle and crawled in along the bottom of the embankments here. They'd constructed rope ladders as well, which were pretty much unheard of in the day, and they climbed the garrison walls with the rope ladders dressed as cattle and basically killed all the English soldiers based in the castle. Unbelievable bravery and ingenuity from the Borders lads. And this really is just another one of these Borders sites, so steeped in history, so much to see, to be quite honest, still as well. I mean, there's still quite a lot of remains of the castle here, but it's unheard of, isn't it? To be honest, I'd hardly heard of Roxburgh Castle until a few weeks ago when I started researching the Black Douglas. But you come down here and it really is, there's quite a lot to see. It's difficult to imagine the nerves it must have taken to basically attack the entire English army dressed as cattle here, with only 80 men and very little in the way of weaponry. But they done it, and they sent the English packing from Roxburgh and retook the castle. Basically they tried to wreck the castle so the English couldn't use it again, so it was never really used as a Scottish stronghold after that. But it was later that year, at the Battle of Bannockburn in Stirling, which is a really famous battle, but not very many people in the Borders know that the Borders man, the Black Douglas, and his army of Borderers led the left wing in that battle and really were instrumental in defeating the English at Bannockburn. A formidable sight. Very daunting, but didn't stop the Black Douglas. Of course, victories at Bannockburn and Roxburgh Castle were merely the beginning of a new chapter for the Black Douglas, or the good Sir James Douglas as he was known in Scotland. Douglas now began his campaign of terror and attack on England. He wreaked havoc in the north of England, absolutely terrorising the place. He went as far south as the Humber, Hartlepool and Yorkshire and totally ransacked these places. This is This is England we're in now. The Black Douglas's reputation was really fearful in these areas. This is a poem that was written by the English housewives of the time. Hush ye, little pet ye. Hush ye, do not fret ye. The Black Douglas shall not get ye. Just didn't be too sure about that. Douglas's attack on northern England was so intense, such a war of attrition. He wore down the English and he wore down the English king, and in the end Edward had no option but to surrender and let Scotland have its independence. So really, the main man at the thrust of the Scottish attack was our borderer, the Black Douglas, or the good Sir James Douglas, that gave us Scottish independence. Shortly after the Wars of Independence and Scotland had gained its freedom, Robert the Bruce died of natural causes. And Douglas, always loyal to his country and his leader, kept his promise and carried the Bruce's heart on a crusade where the plan was to leave Robert the Bruce's heart in Jerusalem. Unfortunately for Douglas, his reputation as a fearless and violent warrior had preceded him, and when in Spain he was killed by the Moors. Bruce's heart was returned to Scotland and laid at the high altar here in Melrose Abbey. Douglas's remains were also returned to Scotland and put in a more modest site. Anyway, the good thing about the Black Douglas, like most Scottish borders legends, is the legend is true. So I'm here today in Douglas, in Lanarkshire, which is the final resting place of the Black Douglas. Let's see if we can get in and see his tomb. Here is the tomb of the Black Douglas. So that was it. Black Douglas's tomb. So we may question his methods, we may not classify him as a hero, we may classify him as someone else, but one thing's for certain, and that is, I salute you, sir. I salute you, Sir Douglas.
In the shield your father wore, gan strike your metal free, gan shine the helm your father wore by the field of Torwood Lee. He raged in Nacht when it was murk, down by the leopard's lair. He chased the tyrant in his shirt around the field sae fair. Gan pack your bags, ye English loons,